I'm Mike Serbaugh, Chief Scout Executive for the Boy Scouts of America. As an Eagle Scout, camp staff member, and professional scouter, I've long understood that keeping our youth safe must be every leader's first priority. The Boy Scouts of America has a long history of youth protection, and this updated training course demonstrates our ongoing commitment. We routinely work with experts in this field to ensure we understand the ever-evolving challenges affecting America's youth and look to bring that expertise to you with this training. For instance, many are aware of commonly known areas of abuse, such as physical abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect. But now, cyberbullying and online abuse are unfortunately an increasingly prevalent reality. These offenders seek to use our respected institutions to access and groom youth, families, and communities, and simply put, this will not be tolerated. All youth should be safe in their homes, neighborhoods, schools, places of worship, and in scouting. A safe environment is necessary so that we can instill in them character, leadership, and citizenship that we know scouting provides. And I know that each of you, parents, volunteers, leaders, and scouting professionals, join me in making this a constant priority. For that, I thank you, because youth protection begins with you. Parents, leaders, and volunteers are at the core and essential to ours and any program's ability to ensure all youth are safe. This training program was developed with and approved by renowned experts and provides details about our abuse prevention efforts and our guidelines. It includes new and up-to-date information on the issues youth are facing and, importantly, how to prevent, identify, respond, and report suspected abuse. Many experts have recognized these tools as best in class, not just for scouting, but for all adults involved with youth in any environment. Help us keep our youth safe from harm by using this valuable resource. We've heard from the experts. This is useful and helpful information for all adults to know. Whether you are a parent, teacher, community leader, or scouting volunteer, the information in this training will empower you to make a difference. And that has the potential to be life-changing for the children and families in your community. Welcome to the scouting family. I hope you and your family find out what we already know. Scouting can offer young people experiences they can't get anywhere else. And we are committed to being the best and safest youth character and leadership program that you will find.
Welcome to the Boy Scouts of America's Youth Protection Training. This training covers various forms of child abuse and maltreatment. If you have personally experienced abuse or know of someone who has, it is important to realize that this training may trigger memories and reactions. If needed, please take a break, speak to an understanding loved one, or reach out to a clinician. At the end of this training, you should be able to create and maintain a safe environment for youth. To facilitate that, you will be able to recognize, respond, and report the different kinds of abuse experienced by youth. You will also know scouting's barriers to abuse and how to utilize them to help create and maintain a safe environment for youth. The Boy Scouts of America's top priority is creating the most secure environment possible for our youth members. We continually evaluate and strengthen our youth protection program to ensure it is in line with and whenever possible ahead of society's knowledge of abuse and best practices for prevention. We also regularly consult with experts from law enforcement, child safety, psychology, and other relevant fields. Abuse or maltreatment of a child comes in many forms. During this training, you will complete different sections addressing child maltreatment to help you recognize, respond to, and report various forms of abuse. These could include neglect, exposure to violence, bullying, emotional abuse, physical abuse, and sexual abuse. As you take this training, it is helpful to keep these 5 important facts in mind. First, most abused and neglected children are maltreated in their own homes, usually by a parent or someone who is close to the child, including siblings, relatives, neighbors, and peers. Second, children who are abused in one way are often abused in multiple ways. For example, a child being neglected at home is often at risk of other forms of abuse, including sexual abuse. Experts call this polyvictimization. For our purposes, it means we must pay attention to all forms of maltreatment if we want to have the best chance of protecting a child from any of these forms of abuse. Third, studies show that children who have been previously abused are at a higher risk of abuse by other predators. This is because those who abuse children are very good at picking up on signs of previous abuse. Fourth, although our youth protection program cannot prevent every instance of child maltreatment in the BSA, our policies play an important role in significantly reducing the risks. The policies you will learn about in this training are designed to limit the opportunities an offender has to abuse a child and to improve your ability to detect signs of abuse or neglect. Both of these goals require your vigilance and commitment to keep youth safe. Fifth, building resilience, the ability to recover from adversity, can help children overcome many life challenges, including instances of abuse. The BSA and you as an adult leader in the program play a huge role in developing resilience in children. Providing positive role models, guidance, support, and a safe environment can tremendously help a child through his or her life.
Leading experts agree that child maltreatment is a public health crisis. Increasing education and awareness is a shared responsibility that will have far-reaching effects in improving our communities.
Centers for Disease Control, major healthcare systems in the country have said that violence, particularly child abuse, is a public health crisis. And the reason for that is we know child abuse is the feeding system for hundreds of other medical and mental health conditions. We know every year we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars dealing with cancer and heart disease and diabetes and anxiety and depression and a whole host of other issues. We could change all of that if we could reduce violence on the front end. The world would look very differently if we significantly reduced maltreatment. Whatever the social ill is that you care about. You want to reduce juvenile delinquency, you're going to have to reduce child abuse. You want to reduce crime as a whole, you're going to have to reduce child abuse. You want to reduce domestic violence, you're going to have to reduce child abuse. You want to reduce bullying, you're going to have to reduce child abuse. You want to reduce mental illness, you're going to have to reduce child abuse. Child abuse is the feeding system for almost every social ill in our country. Whatever it is you care about, you must care about reducing child abuse because they're connected.
When we have the opportunity to increase awareness with youth-serving organizations, with faith communities, with teachers, and everyone else involved with these youth, we are able to provide a safety net around the children. So by implementing policies and by encouraging folks who see something to report immediately, to take action, to err on the side of caution, to educate the youth themselves on everything ranging from good touch and bad touch to online safety to the rules for interacting with adults and the rules for interacting with other youth. When we engage in this sorts of education and these sorts of policy making, then we can create a context in which there is no opportunity and there is no access.
The Boy Scouts of America has developed a youth protection strategy to teach parents, leaders, and youth the 3 R's: recognize, respond, report. Focusing efforts on how to recognize the signs of abuse, how to respond to a child who has experienced abuse, and how to report abuse will enable us to make a difference in the fight against child maltreatment.
The indicators can be very vast, but some things to really look for are potential withdrawal of a child or social isolation developing. Other concerning factors may be if you notice a dramatic drop in a child's grades at school or other big changes in a child's life. I think the biggest thing for any individual who is working with a youth serving organization to know and understand is that each person has the capacity to either improve the life of a child or save the life of a child. And so it's really critical that if you have a concern that something is going on with the child, you see something that you're concerned with, you then go and say something.
Most people, most of the time, won't report no matter how clear the evidence. Now, that begs the question, why? Why won't we report if we even see a child being sexually abused? Well, researchers have asked that question to reporters. Why don't you report even though the law says you have to? And what reporters say to researchers is, well, I'm not really sure. Even if a child tells me they're being sexually abused, how do I know the kid is telling the truth? And I don't want to ruin somebody's career or somebody's life. Some people say, I didn't know I was a mandated reporter. I thought it was just for teachers or others. I didn't think as a volunteer in scouting that I was a mandated reporter. I didn't understand the law in that regard. Some people say, I've reported in the past and it always gets screened out, or if they do investigate, they don't really do anything and they make the situation worse. So I think I'm going to keep it in-house because that's really the best way to help. Some people say I don't report because I think, this could be really bad. I think I might have to testify in court. I think people will find out about it. I think if I'm a small-town doctor, I will lose patients if the word gets out that I make a report. Or people won't come to my daycare school anymore if word gets out that I start to make a report. And on and on and on. We have a number of reasons why we don't report. That's the bad news. The good news is, the better educated our reporters are, the more likely they are to overcome those barriers. So, for example, many say, I'm not sure I've got enough evidence to report. Once they're taught, it's not your job to be an investigator. You don't have to reach a certain evidentiary threshold. The law is simply, do you have a reasonable suspicion? And then make a report and let the authorities, the professionals, sort out whether or not to do anything with respect to that case.
What we encourage parents and scout leaders and faith community leaders is to believe the child. That you always take that report. You always believe that child. You always follow up and refer up the chain until you get to those trained professionals who know how to interview that child and to decrease the obstacles that are getting in the way of that report unfolding.
Child development experts use the term resilience to describe the ability of a child to recover from obstacles and overcome adversity. Resilience is developed when children have meaningful connections with others and learn that they're not defined by negative experiences.
Boy Scouts were so important to me because we would go camping and hiking and meetings, and I was able to take myself on these imaginary journeys and forget what happened. So that's why scouting's been important in my life now for 52 years. And I couldn't wait for my Boys Life magazine to come, where I would read about the dude ranches and field mod and becoming an explorer. And that allowed me to take my own journey.
The fight against child abuse, both within our organization and in our communities, requires each one of us to be knowledgeable about the issues, willing to intervene, and engaged in making a positive impact in the life of a child.
The BSA has adopted mandatory policies called barriers to abuse for the safety and well-being of both youth and leaders. Adults who use the barriers to abuse inside and outside of scouting will reduce opportunities for incidents of child abuse to occur. Let's take a minute to learn a little bit more about each of these barriers. The 72-hour rule. All adults accompanying a scouting unit who are present at the activity for 72 total hours or more must be registered as leaders. The 72 hours need not be consecutive. They must be registered leaders with the BSA. Registration includes completion of an application, including a criminal background check and mandatory youth protection training and volunteer screening database check. Too deep leadership. Abusers often try to isolate a child to create opportunities for abuse. For this reason, the BSA requires too deep leadership on all outings. 2 registered adult leaders, 21 years of age or over, are required at all scouting activities, including meetings. There must be a registered female adult leader, 21 years of age or over, in every unit serving females. A registered female adult leader over 21 must be present for any activity involving female youth. Notwithstanding the minimum leader requirements, age and program-specific supervision must always be provided. No one-on-one contact. The barriers to abuse also prohibit one-on-one contact between adults and youth, both inside and outside of scouting. In situations requiring a direct interaction, such as a Scoutmaster conference, the meeting is to be conducted with the knowledge of and in view of other adults and/or youth. Too deep digital contact. In order to abuse them, offenders must often use digital communications to groom children, and we aim to reduce this risk. The requirement of too deep leadership and their prohibition of one-on-one contact with youth applies to digital communications as well, including text and social media. To ensure no one-on-one contact occurs, leaders must copy another leader or a parent in all digital and online communications. Appropriate accommodations. Separate accommodations for adult males and females and youth males and females are required. Separate tenting arrangements must be provided for male and female adults as well as for male and female youth. Youth sharing tents must be no more than 2 years apart in age. In Cub Scouting, parents and guardians may share a tent with their family. In all other programs, youth and adults tent separately. Spouses may share a tent. Whenever possible, separate cabins or lodgings should be provided for male and female adults as well as for male and female youth. Where separate accommodations cannot be provided due to group size or limited availability, modifications may be made. Where completely separating accommodations are not available, additional supervision is required. If adults and youth of the same gender occupy single room accommodations, there must be a minimum of 2 adults and 4 youth, with all adults being youth protection trained. Physical separation by other means, including temporary barriers or space, should be used only when no other arrangements are possible. These modifications are limited to single gender accommodations. Separate shower and latrine facilities should be provided for male and female adults as well as for male and female youth. If separate accommodations are not available, separate times should be scheduled and posted. The buddy system. The buddy system is a safety measure for all BS activities and should be used at all times, especially on treks and when using restrooms or shower houses. Buddies should know and be comfortable with each other. Self-selection of buddies should be strongly encouraged, with no more than 2 years of age difference and the same level of maturity. When necessary, a buddy team may consist of 3 youth. No youth should be forced into or made to feel uncomfortable in a buddy assignment. Privacy. Adult leaders and youth must respect each other's privacy, especially in situations such as changing clothes and taking showers. Changing, showering, and restroom facilities present a heightened risk for abuse. Adults should closely monitor these areas, but only enter as needed for health and safety reasons. Adults Adults must protect their own privacy in similar situations. Digital devices. The barriers to abuse prohibit the inappropriate use of smartphones, cameras, and imaging or digital devices. The use of any recording device in places of situations where privacy is expected is inappropriate. If it occurs, the device must be immediately confiscated to prevent sharing of content. The device should also be provided to law enforcement if necessary. No secret organizations. The Boy Scouts of America does not allow any secret organizations as part of their program. All aspects of the BSA program are open to observation by parents and leaders. Supervision. Adult leaders must monitor and guide the leadership techniques used by youth leaders and ensure BSA policies are followed. Constructive discipline. Discipline must be constructive and reflect the BSA's values. Examples of positive discipline including verbal praise, high five, and fist bumps. Disciplinary activities involving isolation, humiliation, or ridicule are prohibited. Corporal punishment is never permitted. Appropriate attire. Proper clothing is required for all activities. For example, appropriate swimwear must be worn for all water activities. No hazing. Hazing is prohibited and may not be included as part of any BSA activity. No bullying. All forms of bullying are prohibited in the Boy Scouts of America. This includes verbal, physical, and cyberbullying. Policy enforcement. All units, adult leaders, and youth members have the responsibility to adhere to and enforce youth protection policies. Physical violence, sexual activity, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, unauthorized weapons, hazing, discrimination, harassment, initiation rights, bullying, cyberbullying, theft, verbal insult, drugs, alcohol, and pornography have no place in any of the Boy Scouts of America's programs and may result in membership being revoked. Leader selection. The quality of the program and the safety of our youth members call for high-quality adult leaders. We work closely with our charter organizations to help recruit the best possible leaders for their units. Charter organizations play a critical role in protecting youth. The head of the charter organization or the charter organization representative must approve the registration of all adult leaders in their unit. Mandatory reporting of child abuse. If you see or suspect a child is being abused, stop the abuse immediately and report. All persons involved in the BSA programs must report any instance of child abuse to local law enforcement and in some states also the state's Child Protective Services or CPS. This includes any good faith suspicion or belief that a child is or has been physically or sexually abused, physically or emotionally neglected, exposed to any form of violence or threat, or exposed to any form of sexual exploitation, including the possession, manufacture, and distribution of sexually explicit images, online solicitation, enticement, or showing of obscene material. This duty cannot be delegated to any other person. After reporting to law enforcement, the matter must also be reported to the local scout executive so appropriate action can be taken. If unavailable to reach the scout executive, contact can be done through the Scouts First helpline. Ensure that notification has been made to parents and guardians. Failing to report suspected child abuse may be a criminal law violation in your state. It is important to note that all states allow immunity from criminal and civil liability for good faith reporting of suspected abuse, even if it is later determined to be unfounded. In addition to the BSA's policies of mandatory reporting of child abuse to law enforcement, the following incidents must be reported to the Scout Executive and, if unavailable, to the Scouts First helpline. Any threat or use of a weapon. Any negative behavior associated with race, color, national origin, religion, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. Any abuse of a child that meets states reporting mandatory for bullying or harassment. Any mention or threat of suicide or harm to self or others. If someone is at immediate risk of harm, stop the behavior and call 911 immediately. If you see or suspect that a child is being abused, stop the abuse immediately, then call 911. Some states require that incidents of sexual abuse be reported to Child Protective Services, or CPS. To find your state's child abuse reporting number, go to this website. Additional reporting is required in the state of Texas. It is important to note that all states allow immunity from criminal and civil liability for good faith reporting or suspected abuse, even if it is later determined to be unfounded. After reporting to law enforcement, the matter must be reported to the local Scout executive so that appropriate actions may be taken. If unable to reach the Scout executive and the matter is urgent, contact the Scouts First helpline. Ensure notification has been made to the parents and guardians as soon as possible after notifying law enforcement. You'll find both of these links in your Youth Protection Training Resource handouts. Law enforcement has responsibility for investigating allegations of child abuse, regardless of whether it involves family or non-family members. Child protective agencies are responsible for investigating allegations of child abuse by family members. If a family member is alleged to be responsible for child abuse, consult law enforcement or the local child protective agency for guidance regarding parental notification of reported abuse. The Scouts First helpline is a 24/7 resource when the Scout executive is not available for immediate assistance with incidents of child abuse. The helpline is a resource for incidents involving child abuse or serious risk of harm to children. It is not for general information or questions. For questions about training, policy interpretation, program, etc., please contact your local Scout executive or district executive. If you are unsure, remember a child's behavior may or may not be an indicator of abuse, and child abuse can frequently be difficult to identify. Keep in mind that what you have observed is often only one piece of the puzzle. If unsure about concerning behavior, it is always best to report what you have seen. When you see concerning behavior, trust your instincts and report to the program activity leader, such as the camp director or scoutmaster. In summary, the Boy Scouts of America strives to prevent child abuse through a comprehensive program that includes ongoing youth protection education for all volunteers, parents, and scouts, a formal leader selection process, criminal background checks and other checks, policies and procedures to serve as barriers to abuse, prompt mandatory reporting to authorities of any allegation or suspicion of abuse, a database system to prevent individuals who were previously removed from scouting from re-registering. These individuals do not meet the Boy Scouts of America's standards because of known or suspected abuse or other misconduct, which instead either inside or outside the organization. Leading medical experts called child abuse a public health crisis and have called on every American to do their part in addressing this issue. The Boy Scouts of America is committed to answering this call. Remember, youth protection begins with you.